I've heard it's really hard to get an accurate Lyme disease diagnosis. Like, people have had it and they have had major difficulties actually getting that conclusion to the point where you can get treated.
Right. Everybody's phones are going off.
I know.
Yeah, and that's it going to voicemail.
We've only been doing this how long?
Let's see if Do Not
it's one of
Disturb
those
works
days.
this time. There
Obviously.
we go. Okay, we got Do Not Disturb turned on. We'll
Okay,
see if
yeah,
the
I better
phone
do the
keeps
same
ringing.
for my phone.
Okay, well, we're going back to scheduling these for Mondays. So.
Oh, right.
No, we're not.
Ryan.
No more low quality hangover podcasts.
No?
No.
Oh, come on.
That's right. Only low quality
Podcasts.
sober podcast.
In general.
This is the AT Banter Podcast, a balanced and entertaining look at assistive technology, accessibility, and its importance in people's lives. Join Rob Minot, Ryan Fleury, and Steve Barclay as they banter with people around the world about anything and everything regarding assistive technology and the disability community. Now, on with the show.
Hey, and welcome to another episode of AT Banter.
Banter.
I thought you were turning into Barry White there for a minute. Hey, and welcome to...
That's pretty good. Yeah, that's pretty good. No, just reflecting on that. My name is Rob Minot. Joining me today, Mr. Ryan Fleury.
Hello.
And Mr. Steve Barclay.
Hi, y'all.
And here we are, another day all together in the guitar dungeon.
Are you ready for it?
Yeah, I'm kind of ready.
Are you ready for it?
I'm kind of ready for it. It's
Oh, I don't think you're ready for what I'm asking you.
Oh.
Are you ready for this week's podcast treat of the week?
Oh, yes. Okay, yeah, I am. Actually, yeah, I am.
Is this a segment now?
Yep.
Podcast.
I love
treat of the
this. This is great.
week. Oh, boy.
What do we got? Ding dongs? No.
No, not this week.
Whoa. What?
I've never even heard of it. Either did I.
We have Mae West. Wow, look at the Va-Va-Voom pinup girl on this
Isn't
thing.
that
This little,
coming up in
where
see
did
me
you
sometime.
find these?
Isn't that Mae West?
Walmart.
Yeah.
Mae West. Okay, this looks like kind of like a ding dong, but it looks like it has like custard inside.
Really?
We'll try it out here, everybody. I don't know. Maybe this looks a lot like a wagon wheel, but it's like
Are they? Throw one to each of us.
it looks like a wagon wheel of old because it's actually big. Oops,
Oh, really?
Sorry, Ryan. Oh, damn. Oh, they roll really good.
Intent on checking that thing across the room, aren't you?
Wow. So apparently these have been around since 1923. I have not heard of
No kidding.
AT Banter, cowbell at atbanter.com if anybody has heard of a
Mae West.
Mae West treat.
Tastes a lot like a wagon wheel.
Mm-hmm.
A little softer.
Yeah, it does taste like a wagon wheel. I think there might be a lawsuit. All right, everybody, just skip ahead 6 minutes while we finish this.
That's not bad.
Yeah. I mean,
Is it
I
better,
feel like
better
this
than
is-
the wagon wheel?
Well, yeah. Because wagon wheels, they changed the. First of all, they made wagon wheels smaller.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sorry. I don't mean to sound like a conspiracy theorist, but they've made the. Granted, I was smaller when I was eating them, so maybe they just looked bigger. I don't know. Cowbell at atbanter.com if anybody knows if they've actually made wagon wheels smaller.
All right, so stay tuned for next week's treat.
I'm still enjoying this week's treat. Man, you guys inhaled those.
I didn't have breakfast.
Hold on, folks. I'm showing
Not
you.
that much bigger than a wagon wheel.
Hey, these goes really well with coffee, too.
I like the
Do they?
custard. I like
Yeah.
this. I like the
Vanilla filling better.
Yeah,
Yeah.
this is nice. It's a little bit better than the marshmallowy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I agree.
Not quite as cloyingly sweet.
Okay, woo, that was good. What are we doing now? Oh, hey Ryan.
Rob,
What are we doing today?
Today we are talking with Mr. Michael Feir, who is the original creator and editor of Odyssey Gaming Magazine, as well as contributor to AMI Audio.
Yeah, it's got I think isn't he on like a segment like once a week or something on AMI?
Yep. Yeah, Kelly and Company.
Yeah, I did not really think that accessible gaming went back this far, but apparently he started this thing up in the mid '90s. So he's been into accessible gaming for quite a while. So I'm looking forward to having a deep dive into the world of accessible gaming.
Well, and I think there's definitely, again, like we're finding with anything assistive technology, is there's a lack of knowledge of what's even out there and what's been out there.
Yeah. For sure.
Well, I'm going to announce one little piece of news I saw on Twitter this morning for those of you who are living in Canada and are Amazon Prime Video watchers.
Yes.
They have now enabled video description, audio description.
Oh, nice. Really?
Yes. So I'm going to check it out tonight and take a look.
All right. Well,
thank you, Amazon.
Yeah. We'll expect a full report next week. So
okie dokie.
Get watching.
Alrighty.
We expect to see your imprint in that couch next week, sir.
All right.
Come back, you'll just be all crumb and drool.
Boxes of Mae West all over the floor.
I've watched the entire season of Kitchen Nightmares.
I just binge watched everything.
That's right. Joining us now is Michael Feir. Alrighty. Michael, joining me in the room today is Mr. Steve Barclay.
Howdy.
Hello.
And Mr. Rob Minot.
Why, hello there.
Hi.
All right, that was the show. Thank you. Good night. All right. Well, let's start out by giving us just a little bit of background about a little bit about yourself and what you're up to.
Okay. Well, I've been blind all my life and currently living in Mississauga, Ontario, which is part of what they call the Greater Toronto Area. I'm not sure if all of it's great, but it's nice. It's a good place to live. It's a big city, basically, so a lot of conveniences of that. I have done a few things that I guess I've been most known for my magazine called Odyssey, which I edited and created back in '96 and was the editor till around 2004. And then I handed it over to another fellow after that because I just got burnt out. It was all about games that were accessible. A lot of them accidentally so for blind people, and at the time, and that was really what got me sort of the fame without the money, I guess is what you'd say. So,
yeah, we know all about that.
Yeah, so I did that while I was doing university. I have an English degree, and found out over the years that really it's tough to get work. Anything steady, anything that would really get me off social assistance. So, I did the magazine, which grew into a much larger thing than I thought it would. I was in 14 countries at one point and had a volunteer staff helping me keep the thing going for, about, I guess I did it for about 8 years. And then I wanted to do other things. I had other creative projects that I thought might lead somewhere, and discovered it was really hard to program and sort of build an accessible game. I had to basically shelve that for a while, and then I got into doing a guide. I realized over time that people had these computers that usually were in Canada. We have funding. Certainly in Ontario, it's not solid all across the country. It's different in different provinces, right. But people can get computers and access technology for personal use. And you'd have these people with great machines, but they wouldn't know what to do with them.
Right.
And what they could do. Like I did a lot. I'm a heavy computer user. I always have been since around age 10 when I got my first Apple IIe with Echo speech synthesizer,
Yep.
And
Echo ready.
Yeah. So it was. They've been part of my life for so long that for me it's the natural thing to explore, to look around, to try things. But a lot of people were scared to. A lot of people were told, "Hey, if we have to come and fix this, you're going to get charged. You're going to have to pay, right? So be careful, right?" And that be careful meant don't try anything we didn't teach you to do in their minds.
Right.
And then so they didn't. So they had these great machines, but all they'd use them for was reading and writing, which is what you're obligated for ADP to get training in.
Sure.
and nothing else. So the internet, all the online shopping, the accessible games, all the stuff I took for granted, other people just didn't know about. And I felt really bad about that over time. So I decided at one point to do a guide, the first personal power guide, and that was about 50,000 words. And it took a couple of years to write, and it basically was from a personal point of view, non-employment, just personal life enrichment. What can you do with access technology, the internet, a Windows machine that talks at that time? And I sort of went through all the different things from online shopping to defending yourself, getting antivirus software that was accessible, pointed people to accessible programs and games and things that were out there.
So what around what year would have this been?
That was published in 2008.
Okay.
And that was a crazy summer. I got easily over 1,000 emails in a matter of months, and all about the guide and from places. I wrote this thing for people on ADP in Ontario. I really hadn't thought much beyond that, thinking it would help them. And the CNIB or someone might pick this up and maybe turn into an actual honest to God book and do something with it. And I started getting things happening. Like I got interviewed on AMI's show at the time called Contact. I was on Main Menu, which was a technology show on ACB radio. A college apparently used the guide as a mandatory reading for their course for a while, which I never would have thought would happen. So it spread way beyond what I wrote it for, but helped an awful lot of people. I'm still getting emails about it every now and then. So, and it's long in the tooth now. It's woefully out of date.
I'm fascinated by the magazine as well. I want to talk a little bit about the magazine
Sure.
and your experience there. So, sorry, when did you started it in 96?
Yeah, I was bored one summer. It was hard to find summer work. Again, you go through a degree, and the idea is a lot of the times now that you get summer work experience, and by the end of it, you have something to put on your resume. But that proved pretty impossible. There was nothing that people seemed to want to let me try to do that I could find in a timely enough fashion to make use of that chunk of time in between, course semesters, terms.
Sure.
So I was just bored one summer and just thought, I'd read this magazine called Zizzy News, which was all about interactive fiction. And I thought, a lot of this stuff, it's text adventures, right? It's you are in a passage going north-south. Yeah. There is a spike on the wall. What do you do? And you can type in a command and it would say what happened. Tap forehead on spike. You have a bloody spike now protruding from your forehead. Come up with things like that. So, games have been a huge part of my life since I was a kid. I got a disc. First time I got the Apple IIe back when I was 10, I got a disc of games from a teacher. And, we did our typing lessons in school and stuff and slowly learned that way. But, you give a kid a game and, I would have jumped through fire to learn how to use it and play it on the weekend. So by the time, I came to middle school and was the only blind person in a sighted school, I could type faster than most of the other kids taking the typing class. Like it was the bird course for me because I'd learned playing text games, how to type and how to use the computer and at the time, the Apple's version of the Echo speech synthesizer and its speech. So, if you want to really find a way to get used to technology and learn stuff, games are a wonderful way of just breaking down those barriers. And that experience has stuck with me. And so when I started reading Zizzy News and reading all about interactive fiction, I thought I could do something like that. And I started working on the e-zine that I named Odyssey. I thought I was being so clever. It's AUDYSSEY. Because I figured games are really journeys of the mind, and hence Odyssey, and AUD for audio. Right? So Odyssey. I thought, oh, how clever, wonderful. It goes on the top. So that was the title. And I got notes from deafblind people very quickly who were like, hey, we can't hear games, but we can still play them. I'm like, oh, whoops, sorry. Didn't think of that. But they forgave me and stayed on as subscribers. So the name kind of stuck. And I started it on, I didn't know what I was doing. I did it on something called CompuServe at the time and posted it in one of their forums and never really thought it would go anywhere else. But then it spread. Someone posted it to a list, and an email list, and it started getting some feedback. And then I thought, I'm on an email list called Sky Club. I'll post there. And boy, did that start a firestorm, because a lot of people were paying for the data up north, Northern Ontario. I guess there was a lot of, internet gets very expensive when it's satellite based, at least it did then. So a lot of people were kind of annoyed with this huge 28-page first edition of a magazine that was finding its feet, up on their internet. So I started my first flame war doing that. So
it seems fascinating to me, though, because that particular time frame, games in general, like especially PC gaming, was going through like this huge renaissance, because personal computers were becoming more and more prevalent. In homes, there were things like graphics cards and stuff, made that leap from, the old graphics cards to like 3D. So gaming was in a real revolution. And it's kind of fascinating to me that even within that, like accessibility wasn't really top of mind anywhere within developers.
It really wasn't. And audio games were almost a non-existing thing at that point. And I got to see that whole business kind of kick off and be sort of at the center of everything, because there was nowhere else that really did what I did. No one else was advertising in strictly accessible games. You might get a mention in Access World or some other publication that was doing, a lot of more serious, usually employment related stuff. So this was just way off the beaten track, and everyone just jumped on it. And all of a sudden I had all these, 1,000+ readers very quickly, and was in a bunch of other countries. And you started getting postings from people in like Russia. There was a Russian librarian that used me as, for English lesson material, and all kinds of just totally unexpected, crazy results like that. Sure. And then you got all these people, writing articles in that I suddenly had to edit and post into the magazines and work all the issues of editing out, and then leadership, because they didn't want to wait between issues to talk with each other. So someone created an email list. So Odyssey jumped from being just a magazine that you'd see maybe, bi-monthly, and eventually it slowed down to quarterly. Or you could be part of this active back and forth discussion list all about games, which then all of a sudden they expected me to be a moderator of. So you learn a lot about leadership awfully fast when you're tossed in like that.
Right.
And so I had to really become much more of a community leader than I really had any thought of when I started this thing, and sort of waved this sorcerer's wand that the internet was at the time.
So give us a little bit of a sense then. And sorry, when did you leave the magazine?
I stepped down in 2004. I had done 40 issues, and it just got to the point where I was tired of trying to get people to write articles and take the time to do that, and not just complain when I was a day late publishing.
Sure.
Because there was not enough material, and I just couldn't pull any more rabbits out of my hat. I said most of my, I tried to have, I wanted the magazine to be more than just, this is what's happening now. I wanted it to be more reflective. I wanted it to be, to contain thinking about what we played, as well as just what was there and what people were saying about the various games. I wanted sort of an overarching sort of thread of philosophy through it all to give it some heft, Right. And it largely got that, really. Looking back on it, I was reasonably successful at doing that. But eventually you say all there is to say, and you're kind of struggling, and no one else is kind of coming up with these wonderful things that you thought would be there. If you just sort of built it, they would come, right? And it doesn't always work that way.
Sure.
So I eventually gave it away to another fellow that continued it for about 11 more issues, and then it kind of fell off the rails.
So give us an idea, because, again, I'm trying to think back to that PC era. And it was such a bit of an interesting time overall. But I mean, especially accessibility wise.
DOS had started to see things like Tiny Talk. There were a lot of sort of choices emerging in DOS for your screen reader. I used Tiny Talk a lot. I thought that was just super. It just had this annoying little ad, 20-second wait at the beginning, and then after that, you were sort of off to the races. So I could deal with that. I could wait 20 seconds, if I didn't have to pay anything. So, it was there and use it. And there were a lot of text games. Text games were the thing, and most of them were made by sighted people who never dreamed that blind people would play them.
Right.
So there was a lot of completely, people would get contacted. These developers would, I'd chase them down, or some other reader would ask questions and stuff, and they'd be like, "Oh my God, I never thought blind people could play my games. Wow."
Well, sure. Yeah.
So that was going on, and then very quickly I got contacted by PCS Games. They were the first audio game developers to contact me, and also GMA Games. David Greenwood up here in Canada. Was another very early start. He came out in '98 with, I believe, Lone Wolf. It might have been Shades of Doom first and then Lone Wolf. But those were his two big titles. And then, of course, GMA Tank Commander just blew my socks off. But
Grizzly
so
Gulch.
I got to see all that kind of emerge. And then ESP Softworks popped out of nowhere. And they did, they had Alien Outback, the kind of a souped up Space Invaders. And then we got Pinball, which just totally... Like, it was like having your childhood that you had to live vicariously growing up. Like, I had friends who'd play games, and of course my parents, I'd go to the arcade with my dad, and he'd blame me whenever we got killed, and things like that. So we had a lot of fun with the games and stuff, and he'd describe what was happening as quickly as he could, and give me as much agency as was humanly possible in those frantic circumstances. And but now, all of a sudden, things were starting to appear, especially once we made the jump to Windows, and that opened up more sound capabilities, it seemed,
Right.
and made it easier to make audio games. And then you started getting things like Shades of Doom and Pinball. That was just, and Pac-Man. We've had at least a couple of takes on Pac-Man over the years. Sudoku has been done to death. We've had, at least 10, 12 Sudoku versions I can think up off the top of my head. So it was a lot of, and you had some of everything. You had lots of these audio games. Interactive fiction was kind of coming back, so you had the text-based stuff, and then you had these new whiz-bang audio games that would emerge every now and then you had the online stuff, the MUDs, the things like Srift. That one's still going on strong today. SRYTH.com is neat sort of game book writ large, to take into the nth level of complexity. It's an amazing sort of fantasy work of sort of multiplayer, single player but competitive kind of thing. It's very different. So you started seeing sort of unique stuff like that. And when developers heard of this growing sort of crowd of blind gamers who were desperate for stuff, because we didn't find, it wasn't like a flood. It was a trickle. You'd have, in the sighted world, you'd have new games every week. It would be amazing if a month went by and you didn't have a number of good new titles that grabbed headlines. But for us, you might have a quarter of a year would go by with nothing, half a year, with very little new to talk about. So you'd go back to what was there. You'd dig up old stuff. You'd find text adventures. You'd have to make it really stretch. So. And that's still kind of the case today.
Well, yeah, that was what I was going to ask. Has that gotten any better?
I think in some way, the whole atmosphere has changed. First of all, people have learned a lot of lessons from those early wilder days, and it would be harder to get information out of developers, I think, today. If I were doing Odyssey today, I would really have to wrangle and wheedle and work to try to get, stuff that they would freely. They were at the beginning, they were really ready to open up, be part of the community. There were audio chats on these servers and things that would happen. So you really had a community, everyone's on the same side kind of sense. No one, felt that they were sort of in a relationship that would involve antagonism. And you had an openness that has faded over time. I've found, like, now they know better than to promise, like, when the game's going to be done. Unfortunately, we saw a number of clashes between people who didn't have a sense of how much work was involved and just couldn't wait to play a game and couldn't understand what was taking so long, and that life sometimes intervenes. And one developer was losing his father and was being pestered by these people. I felt so bad for him because he'd been so generous and open with his resources with everybody. And to see that repaid in that way was just, and to have that front seat into why this was all happening at his end was kind of, it was sobering. It really was,
Well, I think that was one of the nice things about having a place to go like Odyssey, as you could find what games were being released, what might be coming down the pike. Nowadays there's more and more Xbox titles, PlayStation titles that are becoming accessible. Madden 20, I've heard, it's actually quite playable for somebody who's blind or low vision. But there doesn't seem to be a place that a person can go to find, what's been tested, what's accessible.
Yeah, it's diluted now. You have multiple places that you have to know about to go to. For example, the two I direct people now would be audiogames.net, AUDIOGAMES.net.
Right.
That is a general, anything is okay there in terms of audio games from basically all platforms. People can start discussions about everything. The one for Apple, applevis.com, is a place where it typically is where any kind of information about iOS gaming and anything new will pop up. They really have that nailed in terms of just being that grand central station for all things iOS and other OSs now that Apple is making them. That's where you go to find out about new apps, what's popular, what's working, and what the problems are.
Right.
So they have a huge app directory for each operating system as people discover stuff. So it's all community driven, and it's really held together really, really well. So that's where I would direct people to now. Anything beyond that, you're looking at specific developers. You really sort of have to hunt down. For example, Android. I haven't heard of any sort of equivalent to AppleVis for Android users. Same with Xbox or these other new console things that are coming out. PlayStation apparently is now getting more accessible.
Yeah.
But there's no kind of place where you can just go and get all of that or what's new with everything.
Right.
I really feel like, accessible gaming is still has really yet to find its footing. I think that we're taking steps, definitely. Look at the Microsoft, the adaptive controller that they made. It was a real big leap forward, and it was Microsoft really embracing the idea of accessible gaming. And a lot of accessibility features now are being baked right into different games. So it's definitely getting better. But you think about it, and the technology is really there. Like, we really have the potential to really make some highly accessible games, or some wholly accessible games. Because if you think about it, you've got haptics built into the controllers.
You've got the accelerometers built into the smartphones. So you've got the motion detection. You've got the audio is and the power is there now. These iPhones have basically, especially the latest ones here. I mean, you've got the same power as you would in a game console in your hand.
That's right. That's very true.
You could do a lot with that with audio. And then there's the screen approach, where with the taptic feedback and stuff, you could have, say, a board game that you could feel the squares, or there's all kinds of things like that I can easily imagine being made accessible. But we're still in a situation where that awareness and people understanding what it's like to be left out. We have examples of text-based stuff, really totally text-based, choice-based, stat-based games. There's no reason you couldn't play, but they're totally inaccessible because the developers just weren't aware at the time of the potential audience, and it's too costly for them to do afterwards.
That's right.
And so you're stuck with things like the fighting fantasy genre. They were great books. My dad read them to me as a child when I was growing up. And they were just decision, pick which paragraph to go to, roll some dice to see what happens in terms of combat and stats. Nothing would have prevented those books, those games, especially when they became apps and programs, from being made accessible.
Sure.
Absolutely nothing. But it never happened.
I just want to be able to play Call of Duty and take out Rob once in a while.
Yeah. Well, that, again, perfectly possible now. At least to a degree. Now, you get into the situation where how much information, one of the things that people don't get, and I kind of wince when this happens, is people make the mistake of thinking possible is easy. Mm-hmm. And there's a big difference with that. You talk about something like a Call of Duty shooter. There is a lot of extra stuff going on there. There's planes going overhead. There's all sorts of different things that are just purely there as atmosphere.
Right.
But the more you put in and sort of auditorily, the more confusing and muddled things get. Mm-hmm. And when that's all you have to rely on, you have to think more carefully. You can't just do a straight everything goes in there, because it can overwhelm too many people who aren't used to really parsing that much audio information at once. So then it becomes, okay, but if we start taking stuff away, is it a different experience? Mm-hmm. Same with simplifying things, auto-aiming and things like that. I mean, eventually you turn it into something that it's more of I think of the Zelda kit. There's a guy that was blind and he managed to finish Zelda. He so desperately wanted to play the same games that everyone else was playing that he got help online from his friends and actually managed to complete a whole Zelda game on the Nintendo. That is monumental.
Yeah.
Like the only equivalent that really occurs to my English major mind would be knowing Shakespeare well enough that you could just jump into any role at any time from any play and just start. Like because he had to memorize all these moves. There was very little audio feedback as to what was happening when and where you were. So if you screwed up, you had to start a chunk all over again. It must have been painstaking to do this. And it wasn't at all like what a sighted person playing Zelda, which is really kind of a fun, adventurous, exploratory romp of audio game, of video game goodness. I mean, that's what a sighted person would experience, is kind of a magical exploration of this environment. Whereas for him, it was this constructed, carefully scripted, painstaking exercise, right, to do this. And that's the kind of difference. And then it becomes, is it the same game, right? So that's the other side. I mean, are we so desperate to play the same stuff that we end up making these compromises, or do we branch out and make our own stuff, which isn't going to make anyone rich?
Well, it's interesting you say that, though, because I don't know that that's necessarily the case. Because, I mean, if you think about today, you have multiple different platforms. You've got PC, you've got the consoles, you've got mobile. And then you have all this technology, like screen readers are just, ubiquitous now. Like every PC, every Mac, has a built-in screen reader. So really it wouldn't be all that hard to develop a game that, strictly from an accessibility basis.
Well, there were some audio games.
We have haptics. We have VR helmets. We have all these things where somebody could go in if they so desired and build a kick-ass game that was completely accessible if that was their intent right at the beginning. Part of the problem is that with gaming now, you have, say, Call of Duty, for example. Now to try to tack on accessibility onto that, your results are going to be mixed.
Still probably doable, but very hard.
Sure.
But there's something like, I think of 6 Ages is my favorite current example on iOS now. There's a developer who had made a game called King of Dragon Pass, which is a wonderful fantasy kind of adventure that has enough text for something like 9 novels in it. It's huge. And this thing is a choice-based sort of consequence story engine. You basically have to guide this clan and try to make them king of this region, form a tribe that you are then king of and be leader of Dragon Pass. It was the first one, and I had played this with my dad in the 90s as a kid, and he had to do all the reading, right? And it was so much reading. This was a heavy text game, so he didn't want to necessarily play that all the time and have to read all that stuff right out loud. But it was kind of infuriating because it was mostly choices, right? Nothing demanded that you see the pictures. And so years later, when I learned that it was being done on the iPhone, it turned out that another fellow, Zach, who was a reader, Zachary Klein, was a reader of my magazine, and he remembered me talking about King of Dragon Pass at one point and contacted these developers. And they basically, A-Sharp Software, Dave Dunham is the head fellow's name there. And he just jumped right on board. He got a programming intern to work with the voiceover aspects of it and made the thing accessible so that it was awkward. Like the map was kind of, it's a struggle to use. It's a hex map that you have to sort of choose segments to explore, but it's perfectly doable. Everything was accessible, and it's no time pressure. It's a turn-based game, so you don't have that franticness, right? You can take your time, and so if you wanted to play, you could, fully accessibly.
Right.
And now, all these years later, he's taken what he's learned from King of Dragon Pass and done 6 Ages, which will hopefully be a series of games. Right now, this is the first one, and he's taken all of that and made it even more welcoming. There are descriptions for the scenes in the game, like you'd have described audio.
Right.
This is described in text, and it's after the regular text of the game. There's another thing that you can flick to, and it's description. It'll describe the scene that is artwork on the screen, and that no one has done that for us before. Like that was just to see that level of detail. He used the voiceover hint system to impart information that otherwise you'd have to hunt and peck for more and go through steps to get to. He made it about as easy for us to get at information as possible. The map in this game, like its predecessor, it has a map. That is important. But what he did with it was, instead of making us fight with this map, he came up with another exploration system that says, here, pick one of these sectors that are and it's either north, south, east, or west of you, one sector away, or it's more distant, or locations that are known, right? So as you discover more of the world and need to go to places, they're put on the map. So it's not a struggle. You still have to think about the length of the journey, all the decisions of getting there, but navigation is not forced upon you. You don't have to sort of struggle with this unwieldy map. So that's huge. I mean, to see that level of effort to welcome in, what is still, a smaller chunk of his market, is huge.
Right. Yeah, and I really think that's all it really takes is it's just going to take a developer to really dedicate themselves to the idea of building a fully accessible game. I think there's money on the table there. I think that if somebody were to build something highly accessible, there's a huge demographic. There's a huge market for that. People would scoop that up and they'd pay their $3 or whatever for the mobile app. And I think there's millions of dollars waiting for somebody to do it.
There can be, but the thing is, a lot of these companies aren't. Even the popular apps, they're not making money hand over fist as much as people think. Like the economics are tighter. We had, because we saw an example of this actually, because people were wondering for a long time, well, what if someone just built a great audio game and you kicked all the money and resources, had, actors had the best kind of sound work imaginable. What would happen in the real world? Well, we've seen that now. It was a company called Something Else. They made, and they included us right from the word go, right from the first version. That we were a key of their audience. This was an audio game, and if we could get the blind people involved, that's is awesome for their. They know they've done their jobs right if we're impressed, and we'll spread word, and which we did. But they brought in actors. They had Sean Bean in the second Papa Sangre game. Lord of the Rings fame, right? I mean,
sure.
he's big lead stuff.
Did he die in the game? Because we know that he dies in everything that he's in.
Yeah. Well, you do defeat him. That's at one point. I got that far, but there was more to the game, and I kicked myself often for not playing it, because what eventually happened is it became. See, once you put an app in the App Store, you have to keep paying Apple to keep it there.
Sure.
and they get 30% of any sales,
Yep.
right? So
Ouch.
that's how they get their money for, putting up the store, for making, the framework.
Which they're actually being sued for right now because of
Yeah.
being a monopoly. But,
yeah, that'll be interesting to see how that goes. And I really don't know which way I want that to go, honestly. I think they are doing a reasonable job. I'd like to see a way of flagging accessible apps better, so you can just search within those.
yeah.
I worry too many beginners get lost in the vast array of apps that don't work, that aren't accessible for us, and they kind of get discouraged. And that's one of the reasons I started working on Personal Power, the iOS edition, and I've hoped to finish that this year. It's been a long road. I've been at this for 3 years now, roughly.
And so Papa Sangry is no longer available?
No, you can't get any of their titles. They had to basically pull all their audio apps out of the store. They had a few great ones. They had that Cumberbatch guy. I can't remember his first name for
Benedict.
the life of me. But he was in Sherlock Holmes.
Right. Benedict Cumberbatch.
Yes, Benedict. There we are. That would have bugged me till the end of time. But he was in one. They had one called Nightjar, where it was one of those aliens have invaded your ship, and you have to crawl and get around, and you heard them crawling in 3D audio above your head.
Wow.
They did a fabulous job with that. And these were built for everyone. These weren't just blind games. These were audio games for everyone, including the sighted, and they were played and got pretty good reviews. But they never quite achieved. They weren't Pac-Man. They weren't these mega popular hits, and eventually it just became too costly to maintain those games and keep, because you not only had to pay to keep them in the App Store, you had to upgrade, do the work of keeping them current as iOS changed. And what happens eventually is that just becomes untenable. You can't. Plus, they had put so much resources into these games, like getting these A-level actors and everything else. I think it was a case of kind of biting off more than you could chew in some respects.
Sure.
But yeah, now all those games are just gone. You cannot play them. They did release their source code to, at least not for the games, but for their audio engine. And I believe someone is making use of that, and we might see something called something to do with circuses, Circus Master. It was something like that being worked on, and we could see that at some point. That would be awesome. I would love to. I will grab that when it comes out. Absolutely. That's the thing, though. It's going to be one game with nothing around it, right? I mean, there's no, I could get this or that game. It's usually one game at a time that gets pounced on and reviewed by everybody.
Well, and I think finances are a big part of it. You referred to GMA games early on. I had Tank Commander, and I played Sarah in the Castle of Witchcraft and Wizardry, and the voice actors were really good, the atmospheric sounds were really good, but if the market isn't adopting these games, the developers aren't making any money, and at some point they're just going to stop, right?
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
Well, and I think that there's a few things that I think that could happen too. I think that also there needs to be a little bit of innovation here. Especially leveraging, like I said, some of the technology that's there, VR headsets, haptics, all the different things that, say, even just a smartphone can do above and beyond just, say, maybe an audio game.
There was a podcast I listened to on the weekend. It was a Blind Bargains podcast. Shout out to them. They had a low vision gamer on there. His name's Jesse. I don't remember his last name, but he just recently acquired the Oculus Rift Quest VR headset, which is wireless.
That's right. It's all self-contained.
All self-contained, and he was actually able to play some, I guess, VR environments using this headset. So we're getting there.
We are, and I think that I think the other piece of the puzzle is the idea of accessible gaming is becoming more and more prevalent, because I think that prior to, say, 5-10 years ago, it was a real counterintuitive idea. People would just be like, well, and even people, say in the blind or low vision community would be like, well, I can't play games. There's nothing out there for me. That was sort of the underlying sentiment. And I think that has to change too.
Unfortunately, there's still true. We're still in a place where you can, if you're a newcomer to this, and you're not, especially if you're not connected, there seems to be a real digital divide. When I started my guide, one of the things that really started me on it was discovering over the years that my assumptions about people knowing. They get these iPhones and they don't know that there's voice. People have used Siri, not realizing that they had a full screen reader in their iPhone. And I would discover this, just the level of, I didn't know that. And these were simple things that I just took for granted for years.
Yeah.
So the awareness level is so low that really has to change. That's one of the reasons I'm doing this guide. I'm hoping to point people to all the surviving accessible games and different apps and things that I've enjoyed. The scientific calculator like Peacock, that's an amazing one. All these apps that people have gone out of their way to make accessible, but there's nothing sort of pointing the beginner to these apps that would be success stories, that would give them a boost of confidence, and add fun to their lives. So,
and gaming is such it's so ripe for harvest, because just talking about gaming in general, gaming has very much changed in the past 20 years in terms of the demographics. I mean, there was a time when video games were for teenage boys and that was it.
Yeah, and the whole thought of games to casual games has emerged
exactly.
hugely.
Well, in fact, I would argue in the past 10 to 15 years, there's been an entire generation of a different demographic of gamer, and people who are, say, entering their 50s, 60s, and may be entering into like having some sort of visual impairments. They still have that appetite to game. They're interested in continuing to game. So I really think that especially in the next 5 to 10 years, we're really going to see accessible gaming. I think there's going to be a demand for it, and I hope some of this can change.
I think it is, but it's slowly happening, right? It's never quick enough. Like, I feel like my childhood has been given to me a smidgen at a time, looking at it from a game view, and seeing what the casual stuff that initially we couldn't access, and now there are Blind Bejeweled. You can have Blindfold Games did one, Color Crush. There's one called Blindy Match, where you're matching gems, and it's the same kind of thing as you'd have in one of these casual puzzle games. So we're getting accessible. It's like we're getting accessible examples of different genres of game that previously we could even try on our own. Hero's Call is another big one on the PC. That is a role-playing game, like a console-level role-playing game where it did amazing on Kickstarter. Now that we've got the crowdfunding happening, like that has also changed this. Now that people who are interested can fund these games, that has really opened the door to a lot more of the entry-level people to do these experiments, right? To see what works. We had a Hero's Call game that they wanted, like, I think it was 3,000, something like that. They ended up getting like over 10,000 from Kickstarter, and used that to hire an orchestra, like to do music for their game, to do it like that. A composer do an orchestral recording with an actual orchestra of the score for the game, which is now on Apple Music and iTunes and everywhere. You can actually get this. And the game itself has, voice acting. It has the 3D sounds, real movie quality soundscape, and it keeps track of when you're having your battles. It all makes audio sense,
right? Like
the positioning of the characters as they move around the battlefield. You hear it happen, and you're never like, oh, that was just a stereo moving. It builds a story. You hear the battle unfold as an audio sensible story that happens, and it's not narrated. It's not the warrior throws his axe at the other. No, this is, you hear it happen like you're watching a movie, like you're part of the Lord of the Rings or something. Like, so that was a huge success story.
And is that still available?
Yes, that is still available. Now, what I don't know is what shape they're in to come next. They had one fellow back out of there were like 3 of them, I guess, initially, and one fellow, a programmer, had to move on to other things, economics, right? So now you have, I believe, still 2 of them left, but I'm not sure. Like, we haven't heard a peep from them since, really, and seen updates in a long time. So I don't know where they're at. And I'm hoping they're still going to surprise us with something new or expansion to what they've already done. But I don't know. This might be a one-hit wonder.
Yeah.
And that would be unfortunate given the amount of resources that they got together to do what they did. So these things do cost money. All the sounds, the royalty-free, the music, the sounds, the sound design. They had a Becker. I can't remember his first name. He's a professional sound designer. Work on scenes and the soundscapes of this game. So it really took a lot more resources than most games of its generation to do in audio. Like, we've never seen this kind of money thrown at an audio game before. So we've seen on iOS and on PC some really interesting. There could be more like this kind of things that indicate what's possible. Platform games are another one. They could be the simplest thing on the earth. It's left and right. It's two directional. You'd think instant. You could just use stereo panning and do this, right? But we haven't seen many of those. I would have expected a lot more in that genre. Certainly before we saw something like pinball. But that's not how it happened. So there are a lot of sort of missed opportunities.
Well, let's hope that Microsoft's xCloud and Google Stadia are going to be accessible from the beginning as well.
That'll be interesting.
Yeah, we'll see.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I really feel like in terms of accessible gaming, I feel like there's all the pieces are on the table.
Yes.
They just need to put them together. And honestly, and I may be remembering this wrong, because I'm old and my memory's going, but I'm fairly positive that in the lifetime of this show, and we're only 3.5 years old at this point, but I'm pretty sure I remember early on, Ryan, doing a story about one of the first PlayStation games where they actually had accessibility features like right in the main menu of the game. That you could access and that you could tinker with.
I remember talking about it, but I don't remember what game it was.
I think it was one of the Tomb Raider games. I think, or maybe it was Uncharted or something.
Don't recall.
Yeah, but so there's been some real movement even recently, and hopefully they can continue to drive that forward. I mean, now it's pretty rare where I get a new PlayStation game that I don't see accessibility right in the main menu. Mm-hmm. So we're making progress. I think that it's just going to take one of the big developers to really innovate and really just sort of try to make something that's accessible right out of the gate instead of just trying to tack on accessibility to a mainstream game, and then see what happens and see what the response is, and even if it's kickstarted. It's an exciting time right now because you can literally have that. You can just make a crowdsourced game that you couldn't do 20 years ago.
The same with the board game and role playing game space too. You have something like 64-ounce games out of New York, I think they were, and they're using 3D printing and mold injection. And this couple, I think they're both teachers, if memory serves. They've just started this business of making these accessibility kits for making board games accessible, and they've lasted at least a year. It's been much longer than that now. They've had a couple of Kickstarters to raise funds for more equipment and things to do more. They have role-playing game dice that are all done in Braille, 3D printed Braille and things like that you could roll. I've got a D20 from them on my desk, and that was kind of cool. In the role-playing books, a lot more work is being thought of now. The awareness is getting into those developers to make those the books that drive these games, right? The rules, the tables, the stats, to try and look at making those more accessible. And I've seen that is a lot of that happens on Kickstarter and through crowdfunding things. When developers learn early on that there's interest, they're usually more than happy to try and go that little bit extra to get the extra business. So provided it's early enough in the cycle, and I think we'll see that. As more of us, more game developers, it takes a few people in a company that really have connections to the blind world. If that's happening more in EA games and other places like that, where you're seeing more movement there. I mean, we'll probably be, there'll be one morning I'll get up and I'll find out that I can play one of these AAA games, and that will be just amazing. I might not even need coffee that day. I might not get much else done, but that would be amazing. And I don't think, I would have dismissed that notion as dreamland thinking, even 10 years ago, but not now. I mean, same with the iPhone. I mean, if you had told me 11 years ago, Mike, you're going to be walking around with a slab of technology in your pocket that can tell you where you are, that you can carry, thousands of books, that you'll still have room for a ton of apps, over 70 games, and, music, and you'll be able to talk to it or use this touch screen, this flat, featureless surface. And it will be, despite that lack of buttons, it will be the most important thing you've ever bought technology-wise.
True.
I would have laughed long and hard at you.
Yep. You'll wirelessly be able to access the entirety of human knowledge.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, Wikipedia and all the rest of it. I mean, it's amazing.
Don't forget the added feature of irradiating your testicles.
Oh, there's that.
There is that. Yeah, there's
bonus feature.
Built-in microwave.
Working as intended. No, it's true. I mean, it's incredible. And so who knows what's going to happen in the next 5 years. But now, so let me ask you this though. So for any of our listeners who love this idea of accessible gaming, where are the information hubs these days? Can you point us to in any direction in terms of being able to find out what's out there?
Yeah. Well, first of all, audiogames.net is for anything that's kind of audio oriented, audio gaming, that sort of thing. That's a good place to start. So PC, Android, Xbox, all that kind of stuff. Chances are, if it's at all accessible, it'll eventually find its way to being discussed on those forums or on that site.
Okay.
There are applevis.com, APPLEV is in Victor, IS, like vision, .com. So applevis.com, all one word, is the place to go for Apple information. Anything to do with iOS, they have tutorials, they have guides, they have a directory, and that directory has a whole huge section devoted to games. Anything new tends to pop up there pretty quick. And you'll find not only what is accessible, but you'll also be warned if something is found to be inaccessible, so you won't waste your money on it. So that's something to keep in mind about that as well. Blind Bargains is an awesome podcast resource. There are a few other things like that, that we'll look into. I did Blind Abilities, an interview with them not so long ago. I do stuff on AMI Audio. Kelly and Company is a show in the afternoons from 2 to 4 Eastern. And I'm on usually Thursdays is my usual day, and I'm usually on at around 2. And I cover audio entertainment, so audio drama, internet radio, podcasts, and games, and audio and iOS. I'm largely coming at it from iOS since that's what I mainly use now for my stuff. So I'm on that show pretty much every week. If you want to reach me, probably email and Twitter are your best bets. Email is michael.feir@gmail.com, and Feir is F as in Frank, EIR. And Twitter, I'm mfair, so M as in Mike, and that's all one word. Those are probably your best bets to quickly get in touch with me. I do have a blog, michaelfair.blogspot.ca. So you can find, and I mostly have been publishing parts of my guide as I finish them off. I put sections of it hoping for comments, which I haven't gotten a ton of. So yeah, more would be great. But it's and when I get my guide finished, of course, I'll be putting that up there as well as any other place that wants to have it. So word will hopefully get around about it, and it'll hopefully help some people.
But listen, sir, we're going to have you back on because we didn't even get past the first topic that I wanted to talk to you about. So we only got as far as accessible gaming, but we'll have you on again. We can maybe talk, about the state of iOS in general, or whenever we decide we want to have an Apple versus Android showdown too. We'll invite you in and we can divvy up the room.
Oh yeah,
2v2,
the whole lightsaber duel and everything. Yeah, why not?
That's what we need, an accessible Star Wars game.
Oh yes, that would be awesome. I'd jump at that.
Yep, I think a lot of us would.
All right, sir. Well, we'll let you go. Thanks again for taking some time and talking to us, and let's do this again.
Yeah, absolutely. Anytime you want me, just let me know, and we'll schedule another one of these chinwags.
You got it.
Alrighty, you too.
Okay, take care, Mike. Well, that was interesting. I had no idea that there was accessible games back in
tons of them.
The early 2000s.
One of the big companies was a guy named Jim Kitchen.
Yeah.
He had a website, Kitchens Inc. They had all sorts of casino games.
Is that right, eh?
Yeah.
Well,
built-in eloquence screen reader, so you didn't necessarily have to use JAWS. There were some self-voicing games.
I know that we've talked to, Marty Schultz over at Blindfold Games,
Yep.
who does a lot of developing for the mobile platform, a lot of the casual games that Mike was talking about. But really, there's just no reason that accessible gaming can't be more of a thing on some of the mainstream platforms and more complicated games.
That sounds like it's coming slowly.
I think so. I'd like to hope so, because I really do feel like all the pieces are there. It's just that somebody has to put them together, and it could maybe just take something that gets kickstarted to really have some success for some of the other companies to wake up and realize, wow, there's a demographic there. There's a hungry demographic for a real decent, accessible game.
Well, and I think it'd be interesting too to look back at least the last 2 to 3 years at E3 and some of the other game developer conferences and actually see, if accessibility's been mentioned, if there's been sessions, because I'd bet there are more and more.
Yeah.
Yeah,
it's definitely becoming more of a conversation for sure. And people are realizing that, people who are blind and low vision, are able to game just as anybody else can and want to. So,
yeah, gaming.
Yeah.
No, I just need a better PC, an Xbox, or a PlayStation.
You should get one. The PlayStation 5 is going to be out next year.
Yeah.
So I'm excited.
There's a new Xbox coming out too.
Yeah. Well, we'll see. See if I'm pretty well established into the.
See, my concern though is if I was to choose a platform right now, it'd be Xbox because of the whole accessibility push Microsoft is doing.
Yeah, I don't blame you. If I was to jump in again, I mean, the fact that the PlayStation 5 is going to be backwards compatible, so I'll be able to play all my PlayStation 4 games on it. So
yeah, they said the Xbox stuff's backwards compatible as well.
Was working through Spider-Man over the weekend.
Yeah,
it's a pretty good game.
The Tobey Maguire versions?
No.
Mike just went out and bought that VR headset for the PlayStation.
Oh, did he? How does he like it?
He's loving it.
Yeah, I've been tempted by that many times. It's just the price point's a little too high for me to jump in.
Yeah, I tried it out. I suck.
You suck in the virtual space as well as
yes. Anything to do with the console, I suck at. So,
Hey Ryan,
what?
Where can people find us?
atbanter.com.
They can also drop us an email if they so desire at cowbell@atbanter.com. Where else can they find us?
Well, they can find us on Twitter. They can find us on Facebook. They can find us on Instagram, but not Google.
Or Pinterest.
Yeah, no Pinterest.
Yeah, not yet. Although, maybe that's something I might have to look at. You guys got some recipes you want to contribute? We can have the AT Banter recipe Pinterest page.
Mr. Barclay might.
Yeah, actually, that's true. Maybe you're like a recipe for like smoked salmon or something.
Take salmon, smoke it.
All right,
there you go. My secret's out.
Pinterest coming soon, everybody. Watch for us on Pinterest. Any other announcements? Anything else we got before we say goodbye, Ryan?
Nope.
You want to sing a song?
Nope.
All right. Well, then, I guess
say goodbye.
That will about do it for us this week. Thanks, everybody, for listening in, and we'll see everybody next week.
This podcast has been brought to you by Canadian Assistive Technology, providing low vision and blindness solutions across Canada. Find us online at www.canasstech.com. That's CANASSTECH.com, or call us toll free at 1-844-795-8324. For all your assistive technology servicing needs, call Chaos Technical Services at 778-847-6840, or find them online at chaostechnicalservices.com.
Whoa, look at that. Master of the one take.